The sacred curse, why darkness chooses you before you choose light. There comes a moment in the life of every dark chosen one when the world seems almost unbearable. And I don't mean emotionally difficult, I mean cosmically unbearable. Like your soul is carrying weight that doesn't even belong to you. Like your nightmares aren't just dreams, they're messages. Like you were born into a family, a society, a body even, that feels like it was never yours to begin with. If you've ever felt like this, I need you to listen closely. You're not broken. You're not cursed in the way the world defines it. You were chosen. But the choice wasn't made by you. It was made by something far older, far wiser. Something that saw your soul and whispered, "This one can handle the fire." And because of that choice, you are now walking the path most wouldn't survive. A shadow destiny path. And there are three trials. 3 initiations. 3 soul crucibles every dark chosen one must face before they rise. The first shadow path is the path of isolation. Let's not romanticize it. This is not the peaceful, monk on a mountain kind of solitude. This is the kind that rips you away from everything and everyone you love. Friends drift, family misunderstands, lovers betray. You become the outcast, the black sheep, the misunderstood soul in a room full of noise. And no matter how loud you scream inside, no one hears you, not really. You start to wonder, why am I even here? But that question is your first key. Because isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. The universe is removing distractions, illusions, false attachments. It's pruning your life like a tree before storm season. You're not being abandoned, you're being refined. And it hurts. Oh, it hurts. But somewhere in that silence, something awakens. Something ancient. Something raw. You stop looking for validation, and you start listening to your own soul. And that's when you realize being alone is not the same as being lost. You were never lost. You were being emptied to be filled with something higher. But here's where most people fail this path. They try to escape it. They numb it. They chase toxic connections just to feel less alone. They beg for attention, even if it's fake. But the dark chosen one? We learn to sit in the fire. We learn to make peace with ghosts. We learn to hear the voice of the divine in our own breath. And that's what separates us. Because isolation, when endured consciously, becomes an incubator for transformation. You start to feel your own power returning, slowly, like embers becoming flame. You no longer seek rescue. You become your own savior. And the irony? The moment you no longer need anyone, the right people begin to appear. But by then you're not desperate, you're discerning. And that discernment is the first sign you've passed the first gate. But it's only the beginning. The second shadow destiny path is the path of rejection and betrayal. This one cuts deeper. Because now that you've found a sliver of your power, the universe sends you into relationships, communities, even spiritual tribes, but only to be rejected again. Not because you're wrong, but because your light threatens their shadows. You speak truth and people scatter like cockroaches under a bright light. You walk into a room and the energy shifts. People project onto you. They call you too much, too intense, too strange, too quiet, too loud, too you. And every time it breaks your heart because you don't want to hurt anyone, you just want to be seen, understood, loved. But again, this is not about punishment. This is spiritual refinement. The dark chosen one must learn how to be unshakably themselves, even in the face of total rejection. You must learn how to walk away not in anger, but in power. And betrayal? That's your final test. The one who said they'd never leave will leave. The one you trusted most will turn. And when that happens, you'll either collapse or you'll rise. I want to ask you something that only a few people will understand at a soul level. What if every heartbreak in your life was actually a divine redirection away from false timelines? What if the betrayal wasn't to destroy you, but to unveil you? You see, most people think rejection means they're unworthy. But the dark chosen one realizes rejection is protection. Not just from others, but from becoming someone they're not. And the betrayal? That's the universe cutting ties you weren't strong enough to sever on your own. You were clinging to illusions, and so the divine tore them away, painfully, mercilessly, but necessarily. Because you cannot carry dead weight into your next evolution. And when you finally accept that, you become untouchable. Not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. So by the time you endure the first two paths, isolation and rejection, you've already been broken down and rebuilt 100 times in silence. You've become someone who no longer seeks the world's approval. You walk differently. You speak less, but your presence says more. And that's when you enter the third and final shadow destiny path, the path of temptation and power. This is the most dangerous of all, because now the universe begins to test your integrity. You've been through the fire. Now you're offered gold. You're given influence, opportunities, platforms. People start to notice you, admire you. Some even worship you. And the ego begins to whisper again. You deserve this. You've earned it. Take more. But the dark chosen one must remember, we were not forged to become gods of this world. We were chosen to serve something beyond it. And that's where the final battle begins, not with others, but with yourself. Because power always reveals. It doesn't corrupt, it exposes. And the question becomes, will you use your gifts to heal or to manipulate? Will you speak truth or sell comfort? Will you choose alignment or applause? Many fall here. Many who once walked in purity become seduced by attention, by money, by influence. They begin to wear the costume of the chosen, but underneath, the shadow has taken root again. And so their fall becomes legendary. But the true dark chosen one, we resist. We remember. We stay rooted in humility. Not false modesty, but deep reverence for the forces that shaped us. We know that everything given can be taken. And so we pour out everything we receive. We become channels, vessels, not idols. And when you pass this final trial, something extraordinary happens. You no longer fear the world. You no longer crave it. You walk through it like a ghost of destiny, seen but not attached, powerful but humble, alone but overflowing. You become a living paradox. And that is your true power. Because you've endured the three great trials: isolation, rejection, and temptation, and come out not bitter, but blessed. Not hollow, but holy. You now carry a frequency that shatters illusions just by being. You don't have to prove anything. You just are. And few can look you in the eyes without feeling their own truth rise to the surface. And now I ask you, which path are you on right now? Which trial are you resisting? And what would happen if, instead of running from the fire, you walked directly into it? The fire that forgets you were ever ash, how darkness transforms into divine destiny. There comes a moment when the pain no longer feels like pain. It transforms. It alchemizes. It becomes something else entirely. It becomes power, but not the kind the world chases. Not the kind that dominates or controls. I'm talking about the kind of power that radiates quietly, like a mountain that knows it cannot be moved. That's what happens when you endure the three shadow destiny paths. You don't just survive, you become unrecognizable to the version of yourself that once begged for love, for understanding, for relief. You become the fire, not the ash. You become the storm, not the wreckage. And people begin to notice. They no longer see you as fragile. They feel something different when they're around you. They can't explain it, but they know they're in the presence of someone who has seen beyond the veil. This is the phase where the dark chosen one begins to embody their divine purpose. But here's the paradox. Even though you've passed through isolation, rejection, and temptation, the path doesn't get easier, it gets deeper. Because now, you're not just responsible for your own healing. You're carrying codes for others. You're holding space for people who don't even know they're asleep. You're walking into rooms and triggering awakenings you didn't even mean to start. And with that comes a new weight, a sacred responsibility. You are no longer just a wounded soul seeking light. You are the light others will misunderstand, misinterpret, and sometimes even try to extinguish. But now, you don't flinch, you don't fight, you see. And that vision is your weapon, your protection, your compass. This is where you begin to understand what your suffering was really about. It wasn't random. It wasn't cruel. It was sacred training. Every heartbreak taught you discernment. Every betrayal sharpened your intuition. Every season of lack rewired your relationship with abundance. And now, when people look at you and say, "You've changed," you nod. Because yes, you've changed into someone who no longer fits into broken systems. You've changed into someone who can't unsee the truth. You've changed into someone who speaks from the soul, not the script. And people will either be magnetized to you or repelled by you. There will be no middle ground. That's the cost of walking in full spiritual alignment. And it's a cost worth paying. But here's where the next test often hides in service. After walking the three shadow paths, many dark chosen ones want to help the world. We want to pour out what we've learned. We want to be guides, healers, teachers. But sometimes we forget that not everyone is ready. Not everyone wants to wake up. And so we waste energy trying to save people who are still in love with their chains. We burn out trying to rescue souls who must first choose to rise. And that's when we learn the deeper lesson of detachment. We are here to inspire, not to control, and to offer, not to force, to be, not to beg. Because the true power of a dark chosen one lies not in what we say, but in what we embody. Our frequency becomes the message. Our life becomes the sermon. And those who are meant to hear it, they will, without effort, without explanation. So I ask you a question that most people avoid because it's too confronting. Are you still trying to prove your worth to people who were never meant to understand your mission? Because until you release that need, you will stay trapped in loops that delay your destiny. Your energy is sacred. Your time is divine currency. And your calling is not to be liked. It's to be effective. The universe didn't choose you to be popular. It chose you to be aligned. And often, alignment looks like solitude. It looks like walking away from everything that once felt familiar. But in return, you gain something priceless: clarity. You begin to see who you are without the noise, without the masks, without the filters. And once you see that version of yourself, you'll never settle again. This is also the season where your gifts begin to sharpen. Not because you studied more, not because you tried harder, but because you surrendered deeper. Your intuition becomes a blade. Your voice carries weight. Your presence begins to shift atmospheres. You become a living contradiction, soft yet powerful, quiet yet commanding, alone yet never lonely. Because now you're walking with forces that most people can't see. You're being guided by whispers others have never heard. And that guidance? It becomes your compass through the chaos of the world. You stop chasing timelines. You start creating them. You stop begging for doors to open. You realize you are the door. And that's when the final transformation begins. You no longer define yourself by the pain you endured. You define yourself by what you became because of it. You're no longer the exile, you are the architect. You're no longer the wounded healer, you are the activated one. You don't carry stories of suffering just to impress people. You carry them because they are your sacred proof that rebirth is possible. That light can rise from the deepest void. That power can grow in the soil of despair. And when people see you now, they see a mystery. They see a presence. They don't know your name, they feel your vibration. And that vibration doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It simply is. And that being is the most powerful force in the universe. The return of the architect, building the new world from the shadows. There comes a turning point in the life of every dark chosen one, where the inner world becomes more real than the outer one. You stop reacting to appearances. You stop being moved by surface-level chaos. You begin to see through reality, not just at it. And in that seeing, you become something rare, an architect, not of buildings or systems, but of consciousness itself. You've endured the isolation, the rejection, the temptation, and now you've stepped into the sacred authority of someone who no longer plays by the rules of the matrix. You write your own code. You bend timelines. You choose your battles. And you begin to construct a new reality, one that is invisible to most, but magnetic to the few who are ready. This is the role most dark chosen ones don't expect, not just to survive, but to build the next dimension. But let me be honest with you, it's not glamorous. It's not a stage. It doesn't come with applause. In fact, the higher you rise in consciousness, the more invisible you become to the world. You're no longer loud. You're precise. Your words are fewer, but they cut deeper. You don't argue, you just know. You don't convince, you embody. And that embodiment becomes your greatest tool of creation. As you walk through this world, every step becomes a seed. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every decision becomes a divination. You're not just living, you're weaving. And the threads you pull don't just shift your life, they shift the collective. Because now you are operating from the realm of impact, not attention. From presence, not performance. This is where the chosen ones become the secret leaders of the new earth. We are not in palaces. We are not on magazine covers. We are in forests, in quiet apartments, in meditation rooms, in places most overlooked. But we are building something ancient, something future-bound, something sacred. And the reason we were forged in darkness is because only those who have endured the shadow can be trusted with the blueprint of the light. We know what pain does. We know how systems fail. We know how illusions crumble. And so we do not build from ego. We build from essence. We don't want followers. We want freedom. We don't want control. We want clarity. And we are willing to walk alone if that's what it takes to protect it. At this stage, your intuitive gifts become unavoidable. You no longer wonder if you're psychic, if you're empathic, if you're activated. You know. You know when a room is off. You know when a person is lying. You can feel timelines shifting in your body. You predict patterns before they unfold. And this isn't magic, it's memory. You're remembering how your soul operated before it was confined to flesh. You're remembering how to co-create with spirit, not just pray to it. You're remembering that your voice is a spell, your thoughts are blueprints, and your intention is a weapon. You stop giving energy to things that drain you, not out of pettiness, but because your energy has become sacred currency. You no longer spend it on what isn't aligned. You invest it where the future is being born. But here's a truth that stings. Even now, even after all you've endured, you will still be misunderstood. You will still be feared. You will still be misjudged. Because people see your power but not your process. They feel your presence but not your past. They sense your authority but don't know the agony that shaped it. And that's okay. You no longer need to explain. You no longer need to defend. You simply exist, and that existence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. You are the walking evidence that transformation is possible. You are the living proof that the darkness was not a death, it was a door. And now, you carry the key. But what will you do with it? That's the final question. Will you hide now that you are whole? Will you shrink now that you are powerful? Or will you build Will you walk into spaces that are still asleep and drop seeds of awakening? Will you create art that speaks to the soul? Will you speak words that shake people out of their numbness? Will you hold space for others without losing yourself? Because this is the final threshold, the choice to live not just as a survivor, not just as a mystic, but as a builder of worlds. You were not chosen to be a symbol, you were chosen to be a system disruptor, a seed planter, a bridge between dimensions. You are the living interface between the seen and unseen. And now the question is not, what happened to me? The question is, what will I do with the power I've unlocked? And if you've truly walked the 3 shadow paths, then you already know the answer. You will build silently. You will love deeply. You will protect your peace like it's holy. You will speak when the message is ready, not when the world demands it. You will lead without needing to be seen. Because you finally understand, the most powerful beings on earth are not the ones who control the world, they are the ones who carry the codes to rebuild it. And you, dark chosen one, are one of them.